I entitled this sermon, Blessed Are the Peacemakers, Not the Headline Grabbers, because the headline grabbers get all the attention, it seems like. The louder you shout, the more outrageous things you say, and the more dramatic, painful things that you do, the more attention you get. And one of the things that we have learned from everything from the Columbine High School tragedy all the way through to the most recent is that there's something inside of these people who want to grab a headline, or they want to start a movement, or they want to become a famous person. You know, why do we know the name John Hinckley? Did he accomplish something wonderful? Did he discover a cure for a disease? Did he liberate a whole nation of people from bondage into freedom? No, he put a bullet in the president. If you want your 15 minutes of fame, do something to grab some headlines somewhere. If you want to live, be a peacemaker. There's nothing that grieves the heart of an old white-haired preacher. There are a bunch of us around, so it's a big club. Read studies by George Barna, where he tells that the lives of people inside the church who make some profession of faith in Jesus Christ really don't look that much different from people who are on the outside of the church. All those sermons, all those Bible studies, all those lessons, all those prayers, all those years, and we end up living pretty much like the world outside? It can't be true. George, you gotta have it wrong. I've seen lives transformed. I've seen lives turned around. I've seen lives brought out of bondage into freedom. I've seen the liberation. I've seen the deliverance. I've seen the forgiveness of sin. And yet he says, the influence of the world is so strong. The influence of Satan is so powerful that for many, many people, they drift from the worship service where they learn what Jesus Christ wants us to do. And then they spend the next 40 or 50 hours listening to the television and all the things that go on in there. And it washes away the effect of what Jesus Christ calls us to be. And we go right back to being the same kind of people who are tempted to grab the headlines instead of keeping our minds focused on being God's people. I want you to start with this. In Luke, the 2nd chapter, verse 49, I only have one verse. You don't need to look it up. It's a simple story of Jesus when he was 12 years old. He got lost. Simple thing. You ever been in a store and lost one of your kids? Yeah, it happens once in a while, and you go chasing around. I took photographs of all my kids and grandkids when we were doing things at the recreation parks and things. So when they got lost, I'd have a picture on my telephone to say, this is the kid I'm looking for. You know, so the security forces keep an eye on him. Never actually had to do that, but I always prepared, because once in a while your kids drift off in their own direction. Okay. Well, he drifted off, 12 years old, and as the family was very well known, they were headed back home to Nazareth. He didn't get with the group. And they traveled a day, and they looked around, and he wasn't there. They thought he was somebody else, and they thought he was hanging out with one of his friends, and he wasn't there. And so finally, there was nothing left to do. They had to go back to Jerusalem to look for him. See what might have happened to him. They looked for him for 3 days. And then they decided to go up to the temple and look in the temple to see if he might have somehow drifted back into that house of worship. And they found him sitting with the scribes, with the teachers of the law, listening to them and asking probing questions, and they were amazed at his understanding as a 12-year-old. We start quizzing when they're 5, 6, 7, teaching them God's Word. In Jewish tradition, you didn't get to read God's Word until you were 13. He was still a year away from that. And yet he was astounding them with his knowledge. And finally, when Joseph and Mary found him and confronted him and said, "Why did you do this to us? You put us through misery." He simply looked at them and said, "Wouldn't it just be clear that I'm going to be in my Father's house? Seems simple to me. I'm doing my Father's work. It's very simple. I want to be a faithful son of my Father." Okay, now I'll have you turn to Matthew, because we're going to learn a little bit here about what he had in mind when he was talking about being the Son of God. We're in Matthew, we're in the 5th chapter, and we're going to be jumping around a little bit, but I want you to start with verse 9. It's one of the Beatitudes, and it's a very important one. Because when we talk about being peacemakers instead of headline grabbers, there's a very important payoff. You may not get your 15 minutes of fame, but look what it does for you. Verse 9, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God." Wow! Children of Almighty God. Why? Because they look so different from the people who are children of this world that they stand out as being children from a different father. Peacemakers is hard work. I once taught a lesson back in Bradenton, Florida, and it took me a whole hour to try and get people convinced that being a peacemaker was going to make me into also a troublemaker. They said, no. Being a peacemaker is a good thing. I said, no, you actually ask people to live at peace with each other. They will get mad at you. They don't like peacemakers. Why? Because it makes them look bad. I like kind of stirring things up a little bit, just a little bit. And I start talking about how we're supposed to be peacemakers in different ways. And people go, no, you got to stand up and defend yourself. If nobody stands up to defend you, you're the only one you can depend on to do it. You got to get in there and you get. Really? Where did you learn that? Didn't come from Scripture. Is that written someplace in the Constitution in this country? You got to stand up and be your own man. You got to stand up and defend yourself. You got to do that. It's just a part of our world. It's a part of our culture. It's a part of our human nature to try and assert ourselves and demand and insist and manipulate and get what we want or avoid what we don't want. Jesus writes in verse 17, "Do not think that I've come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish those laws, but to fulfill them. I tell you the truth, until heaven and earth disappear, not even the smallest letter or the least stroke of the pen will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Anyone who breaks even one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven." Now I want you to stop and listen to that for just a second. Anyone who breaks even one of the smallest of the commands and teaches others to do the same is in big trouble. Okay? Jesus came not to release us from the law, but to fulfill the law. And the way he did that in the Sermon on the Mount, and I'm going to take you through about 5 steps here. He starts off by saying in verse 21, you've heard it said, the people long ago, do not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. Here's what a peacemaker does. If you want a definition of a peacemaker, this is what a peacemaker does. He reaches down behind the law into the motivations and attitudes that require that law to be placed over us and hits at our desires, our emotions, and our warring factions within us. Here's what he says. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with his brother will be subject to the judgment. Well, wait a minute. You mean to tell me, Jesus, that we've lived here for 2,000 years with the rule that says, don't kill your brother? Oh, and I've had my temptations. I've come close a time or two. You know, it happens growing up. But listen, anyone who is angry with his brother is under the same judgment, the same exact words as someone who kills their brother. How do you want to be a peacemaker in an angry world? You stand up and say to people who are angry, you're going to pay. Well, you know what? That'd take half the programs off our television sets. Think about it. If you get angry, you're under the penalty for murder. It would rule out any political campaigns, most of the advertising, and all of the great shows we love to watch. Have you ever seen NCIS? It's supposedly one of the most popular shows that's ever been on television. It's no Leave It to Beaver. And that gets ugly. People don't know how to be at peace because they can't release their anger. If you have to live with this edge, this adrenaline pumping hormone inside of you that just has to keep you juiced up and angry all the time, you can't be a peacemaker. You can't. Oh, it gets deeper. Again, anyone who says to his brother, Raka. Oh, I love that word. Just makes shivers going down my spine. Raka, you idiot. You stupid fool. Try and go a day and not hear someone say that. Just try it. Try it. I challenge you. Put it at the top of your to-do list for tomorrow. I want to listen to see if anybody can get through a whole day without somebody calling somebody else a stupid fool, an idiot, a moron, a nut. You better not listen to the radio. You better not listen to television. You better not go on the internet.
Amen.
It's going to be a quiet day at home. Why? Because that's the way the world is. But anyone who says to his brother, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. Eternal punishment. What Jesus is doing is saying, live at peace with the people who surround you. Live at peace with the people you share this planet with. Live at peace with the people you share your homes with. Live at peace with the people you work with. Live at peace with the people you play with. We can go on, talk about some more, all right? But we're going to jump to verse 27. You've heard it said, do not commit adultery. Another one of the Big Ten. I mean, we're talking about the core of Jewish faith right here. Don't commit adultery. Be faithful. But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. You think it's easy being a peacemaker? You want to have people live at peace and then remind them of all the turmoil and stuff that comes up through their minds as they start looking around? We were just talking this morning. They had a big Paris auto show. I was reminding people over here in the Sunday school class. They showed all these expensive, wonderful new creations, these new wonderful vehicles. And the vehicles themselves are an amazing sense of creation of what people can do to try and build something that's sharp and fun and exciting and it's great. But you know what they have standing next to each one of those automobiles? A beautiful woman with almost nothing on. I can't even watch two people kiss on television. All of a sudden I have to turn away. It's too suggestive. It's too much for my mind to absorb. I can't keep myself focused. Listen to me. We think too much of what we want in this world. What we think is going to make us happy. And all of a sudden we realize we've been letting a lot of stuff run around in our head that shouldn't be there. And then you have some peacemaker. Such a, you shouldn't be thinking that. It's dangerous. You see, Jesus actually said, if you can't look without thinking, you ought to gouge your eyes out. Does that mean we ought to have a bunch of blind people? No, we still think bad stuff. That's just who we are. But a peacemaker has to remember there's a reason why we have a law that says do not commit adultery. Keep yourself pure. There's a reason that law is in place. God does not want us causing chaos within our world, within our families, within our marriages, within our homes, because of our undisciplined minds. Well, he probably should have stopped right there because he was digging himself deeper and deeper into a hole and making more and more people who had questionable thoughts angry that he was making them feel guilty. But he went on, verse 33. Again, you've heard it said to the people long ago, do not break your oath, but keep the oaths you have made to the Lord. But I tell you, do not swear at all, either by heaven, for it's God's throne, or by earth, for it's his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it's the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you can't make even one hair white or black. Simply let your yes be yes and your no be no. Anything beyond that comes from the evil one. And you know what that does? That makes a whole bunch of our professional people really nervous. You know why? I sold a house about a year ago. I took several contracts, purchase contracts for the house. If you know anything about what it takes to sell a house, you'll realize that it used to go from 2 or 3 pages, and now it runs a whole half-inch thick almost of the pages it takes to sign that contract. Promising all the things that you will do or not do, and you know something? I'm going to tell you the truth right now. You put your name on that 16 different places, and it doesn't make a hill of beans worth of difference. You know why? Because if the people on the other side of that contract do not want to keep it, there's enough stuff built inside of it they can get out of it anytime they want to. Why would they write a 20-page contract that nobody plans on keeping? Because they don't have integrity.
Amen.
They don't let their yes be yes and their no be no.
Amen.
I told 100 different real estate people, I have only one goal. I want a person of integrity who walked through the door and said, well, I think this is a cool place, I'd like to have this, and I'll reach out my hand and shake it with them, and we'll make a deal. I don't need a 20-page contract you aren't planning on fulfilling anyway. But that's not the way we do business. Our world is such that if you don't listen with a careful ear to even the commercials for the medications and things they say you want to talk to your doctor about, to all the things that that pill can do to destroy your life, to take away your health, even kill you. And they have to say it because the, government says they have to tell the truth about what they're selling. Listen, the oath that we take and we don't really intend to keep it simply means that we don't care about what we're standing here in relationship with the Jesus Christ and with His Father in heaven. When the 10 Commandments said don't lie, it was bear false witness, don't tell something that's not the truth, keep it straight, tell the truth. What they were trying to say is be people of integrity. People who don't create friction and all kinds of chaos because you want to tell one person one thing and you want to do something else. You want to cover up the fact that you're not going to be faithful, that you don't want to take care of things that you promised to do. You know what a lot of business people would tell me? Hey, it's just business. That's the way you do business in this country. It's just business. It's not personal. It doesn't have anything to do with faith. Really? Really? Had one of my main leaders in my church one place back years and years and years ago claimed to be the super Christian. He was really, really with it. And you know what everybody in town said? We just hate to see him come through the door. He is so mean-spirited. He was so selfish. He's so hard that he will never keep his word. He will never honor what he is always finagling to try and get an edge. He's always on the lookout for how someone else might be gouging him. He's always unfaithful in doing business with each other in the community. And then he would walk in and sit in his pious chair and say, doing everything just like the Lord wants me to. No, not really. The whole community says you are the author of chaos. You're the author of strife. You're the author of anger. You're the author of panic when we try and deal with you. All of a sudden, the truth of His Spirit comes out. He is not a peacemaker. We're not done quite yet. Verse 38, you've heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. And if someone strikes you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And by the way, that's not one of the big 10. We've now moved from what God gave us on Mount Sinai down to a simple command that says eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. The reason that rule was made because our normal reaction is if you punch me and knock out a tooth, I'm going to hit you hard enough, you're going to lose a whole mouthful. And that was to try and soften the revenge and the anger that just automatically seems to well up in people. And so if they said if he hit you with a stick hard enough to knock out one of your eyes, you don't bash in his skull. You keep it a little bit moderate. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. Ooh. That bites. That really stings. You see, when you love the way Jesus Christ loves, when you try and have the heart of Jesus Christ, there are a lot of things about what the world tells you that you have to say, that's bad information.
Amen.
That's taking me in the wrong direction. That's contrary to what my Lord says I'm supposed to do as a follower of His. Verse 43. You have heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemy and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. Listen carefully. This is the summation of the sermon. We don't want you to lose the point. Peacemakers are clearly from a different Father. Blessed are the peacemakers. What's the reward? You will be called sons and daughters of God, children of your Father in heaven. If you love as Jesus Christ loved, if you care and pray for those who right now couldn't care less if they hurt you or killed you or persecuted you or did anything in the world to you, you are going to look different than the rest of this world. It's going to feel different to take care of you and to look at you and to deal with you and to listen to you. Your words will have different meanings. Your words will be honest and filled with integrity and filled with gentleness and patience. God sends the rain on the just and on the unjust. And if God sends the rain on the just and the unjust, should we have the same feelings about even those who have a different religion, a different way of worshiping, a different person they call God? If God doesn't starve them to death, why should we find ways to harm them? If God doesn't burn their crops out with the lack of rain, why should we withhold our blessing? And then all of a sudden our world gets really crazy. Peacemakers are not born of human parents. They're children of Almighty God. They think differently. They have a different DNA inside of them. They behave differently. My friends, I want you to understand, there's no blessing I want to leave you with. There's not a single thing that is more important to me than when you come to the end of your life and they say, now there was a true child of God. There was a friend of God. There was someone who walked day by day with Jesus Christ. There is a person who was filled with God's Spirit, and you could tell it by everything they said and did. Because there isn't any preacher who can talk you into heaven at your funeral, but people will know you are a child of God if you live as a peacemaker. The world wants us to complain. The world wants us to find the weaknesses in another. The world wants us to whittle down on each other. The world wants us to put others down as being just a bunch of idiots. Jesus Christ says it's going in the wrong direction. Live it like I live it. When I could stand in front of an angry crowd, surrounded by thieves, destined to die within a few minutes, and still say, Father, forgive them. I still love them. My forgiveness is poured out to anyone in this group who wants to claim it. I give my grace freely to every person.
That's right.
Come and follow me. Come and listen to me. Come and live by my rules. You've heard it said one way. I'm telling you how God wants it lived. If there were words etched on my tombstone that I craved more than any other, it would be, he lived as a child of God. May the God who loved you so much, he just gave it all for you, be a pattern that you can claim for yourself. And as you walk in his footsteps, as you walk in the life that he showed us how to live, the whole world will say, there goes somebody who really knows how to live. The life that everybody wishes they could live. The life of love. The life of hope. The life of joy. The life of grace. The life with friendships. With loving fellowship. A life lived as a peacemaker. Because they were the sons and daughters of their Father in heaven. May that blessing carry with you through this building and out into the world to show the world it does make a difference to know who your daddy is. And will give you the glory in all things.